Close your eyes and imagine you're no longer in the 21st century. No more skyscrapers, no more Wi-Fi, no phone in your hand. In front of you lies a vast savanna in East Africa, wild, windswept, and soaked in the scent of blood. Among the tall grasses, a creature moves. Not a lion, not a monkey. It walks upright, scanning the field with calculating eyes. In its hand, a stone. And as it smashes that stone into a bone, you suddenly realize this thing is thinking. It is Homo habilis, the handyman, a being half human, half ape, but the first in history to dare use tools to change the world around it. The world of Homo habilis was a brutal stage. Leopards lurking in the bushes, crocodiles wading beneath muddy water, and hungry hyenas circling the firelight each night. But within that constant fight for survival, something extraordinary began to stir. Intelligence was awakening. Before the wheel, before writing, before language itself, there was Homo habilis, quietly laying the first stone in the long journey we now call humanity. In this video series, we'll journey back in time, following the ancient footsteps of Homo habilis to discover who were they, how did they live, and most importantly, what did they leave behind for us? Because to know where we're going, sometimes we have to return to where it all began, right in the heart of the wild savanna, where one small creature dared to pick up a stone and dream. Part 2, half ape, half human. Now imagine, if Homo habilis somehow wandered into our world today, how would you react? People wouldn't call it human, but they wouldn't dare call it a beast either. Standing under 1.5 meters tall, smaller than a modern teenager. Slightly hunched, thick body hair, a rugged face, protruding jaw, low forehead pressed flat, and deep-set eyes beneath heavy brows. A shape both alien and familiar, as if the past itself were staring straight at you. But the strangest thing isn't how they look. It's what's inside that small skull. Beneath the 600 centimeters cubed of bone, a brain was beginning to wake up. Compared to their ancestors, the fruit-picking, root-gnawing Australopithecus, the brain of Homo habilis was clearly more advanced. They didn't just survive. They watched, calculated, remembered. And then, they began to act with intention. They walked on two legs, but their arms remained long and strong, ready to climb trees the moment danger appeared. They lived on the ground, but the instinct of the forest still pulsed in their blood. Homo habilis was an unfinished being. Not yet fully human, but no longer just an ape. A bridge in evolution, suspended between instinct and reason, jungle and savanna, survival and the first spark of thought. When you look at them, you don't just see your ancestors. You see a rough draft of yourself, when the mind was still young, but already dreaming of fire, tools, and a future. Part 3. Where did they come from? How did a tree-dwelling ape, walking on two legs, ever become a creature that held stones, shaped tools, and laid the very first foundation for human intelligence? The answer begins with a familiar name, Lucy. Lucy, Australopithecus afarensis, lived over 3 million years ago. She had a small frame, walked upright, but was still an expert climber. Her skull was the size of an orange, her teeth large and ape-like, and her behavior, pure instinct. The ancestors of Homo habilis were beings like Lucy, creatures of the forest, plucking fruit, leaping from branch to branch, sleeping in the treetops to escape predators. But then, the earth changed. Forests began to vanish. Grasslands spread wide. Species were forced to choose, adapt or disappear. Some individuals stepped down from the trees. They wobbled on 2 feet, and one day they reached down and picked up a stone. They began to explore the ground where bones, meat, roots, and lurking danger awaited. And from those shaky but promising first steps, the path toward the genus Homo began. At first, scientists believed that Homo erectus came right after Australopithecus, but the gap was too wide. as if a whole chapter was missing. Then, Homo habilis appeared, with a larger brain case, more flexible hands, and most importantly, signs of thought. They were not born by chance. They were a symphony between primal instinct and emerging intellect, a missing link now found. And with it, the story of evolution becomes more complete, a relentless journey of creatures willing to adapt, to change, and to dream big. Part 4. Secrets from the Depths, Olduvai Gorge. Every story about the past begins with a moment of revelation. For Homo habilis, that moment came in the early 1960s, in a barren gorge swept by dry winds and scorched red earth, Olduvai Gorge, Tanzania. There, legendary archaeologists Lewis and Mary Leakey uncovered something the world had never seen, a fossilized jaw, not from a monkey, but not yet from a human. A strange creature, caught between two worlds. In the days that followed, that single bone opened the floodgates, a fractured skull, revealing a brain on the rise, hand bones showing refined grip and precision, leg bones proving upright walking. Piece by piece, they rebuilt the portrait of an ancient being, not just surviving, but starting to think. But the greatest shock didn't come from the bones. It came from the stones. Scattered nearby were dozens of crude stone tools, sharpened edges, wear marks, intentional shaping. They didn't break by chance. They weren't random. These were the fingerprints of a being that knew how to use tools. From that day forward, Olduvai was no longer just a dusty gorge. It became the gateway to the dawn of human intelligence. And Homo habilis, once an obscure name in textbooks, became living proof that, before we wrote, before we painted, before we spoke, we shattered stone, made blades, and began to rewrite the history of Earth. Art 5. The first stone, the turning point of intelligence. Take a look at a stone, just a piece of rock, rough, cold, lifeless. But in the hands of Homo habilis, it became a weapon, a tool, and the first symbol of human thought. Some 2.5 million years ago, on the rocky, bone-strewn plains of East Africa, a group of Homo habilis bent down and picked up a stone. Not for fun, not out of curiosity. They chose a specific shape. They picked up a second stone and struck it. A shard broke off, sharp as a blade. And just like that, the first tool was born. Not by accident, not by chance. They had purpose: to cut meat, to strip skin, to crack bones, to extract marrow, to shave roots, to split hard shells. Every strike was a decision. Every sharp edge, an idea made real. That tool set is now called the Oldowan industry, the first known stone technology in human history. And it marks something that had never happened in over 3 billion years of life on Earth. A being that created because it had begun to think. Oldowan tools aren't beautiful, they're not elegant, but they represent something monumental. For the first time, humans began to interfere with nature. Homo habilis was no longer just scavenging like its ancestors. They shaped rock into knives. They chose bones. They chose timing. They chose method. They didn't just survive, they engineered survival. The moment a stone shattered into a blade was the moment human history changed course, from instinct to intellect, from prey to creator. Homo habilis left no temples, no writing, no poetry, but they left a sharpened stone, and with it, they began to write the story of humanity. Part 6. Life on the Edge, Rhythms of the First Pioneers. No villages, no rooftops, no fences. But Homo habilis had something else: community. They lived in small groups, perhaps a few dozen, maybe up to 80. Much like today's chimpanzees or baboons. A wild, lawless world, but already echoing the first hints of social connection. Maybe they shared food. Maybe they kept watch together. Maybe they formed long-term pair bonds, early roots of human relationships. There were no weddings, no rules, but there was care, there was protection. By day, they wandered the savannah, searching for water, for wild fruit, for roots hidden beneath the soil. and watching the remains left behind by predators. By night, when darkness swallowed the plains, they climbed back into the trees, to sleep, to hide, to survive the silent stalkers of the night. Hyenas, leopards, things that didn't need fire to kill. Homo habilis lived between two worlds. On the ground, where tools, meat, and opportunity waited. In the trees, where safety, instinct, and ancestral memory still clung. But perhaps the most astonishing clue was found in a circle of stones, deliberately arranged near one of their sites. Not a house, not a fortress, just a few rocks placed in a ring, no higher than a human knee. And yet, it speaks volumes. They had begun to think about shelter. Beneath the blazing sun, under the sudden rains, they didn't just endure. They began to shape their own space. This wasn't just survival. It was the beginning of architecture, of the idea that this patch of earth is mine. I belong here. Part 7. Living among fangs, when humans were still the prey. Forget the image of humans with guns, campfires, and spears. Because in the Pleistocene, across the sweeping grasslands of East Africa, Homo habilis wasn't a predator. They were the prey, standing under 1.5 meters tall. No claws, no fangs, no walls, no fixed shelter. The body of Homo habilis was, in essence, an invitation to be hunted. Under the burning sun and in the shadows of night. Leopards, fast and capable of climbing trees. Prehistoric hyenas, moving in packs, striking from all sides. Saber-toothed tats, one bite could crush a skull. Nile crocodiles, lurking silently beneath still water, waiting for one fatal misstep. One mistake, one sound, one slip while bending to drink, and life ended. No medicine, no ambulance, no one to come running. Their intellect had pushed them beyond their ancestors, but it still wasn't enough to conquer the wild. Every day survived was a victory. Every night in peace, a miracle. They learned to listen to the wind, to smell blood in the air, to read tracks in dry soil. Their instincts were sharpened like their stone tools, not to hunt, but to avoid being hunted. We like to think of evolution as a glorious climb, but for Homo habilis, it was a long, desperate escape. From claws and teeth, from open plains and unnamed fears. Because before humans ruled the food chain, we were its most fragile link. Part 8. The intellectual race, adapt or be forgotten. Homo habilis was not alone in that harsh savanna. They weren't the first in a world of silence. In fact, they lived alongside other versions of humanity, racing along the same path. Homo erectus, taller, stronger, better hunters. Homo ergaster, more coordinated, socially complex. Homo rudolfensis, larger brains, advanced thinking. There were no wars, no spears thrown, but the competition between human species was fiercer than we imagine. They competed for water in the shrinking pools of the dry season. They competed for food, for carcasses, roots, bird eggs, anything edible. They competed for shelter, cool rocks for shade, safe ground free of predators. In a world with no rules, those who moved faster and thought smarter survived. Those who lagged behind faded into history. With their primitive tools and loosely organized groups, Homo habilis was slowly overtaken by their evolutionary younger siblings. Not in a single night, not with fire or violence, but through time, adaptation, and the relentless forward march of evolution. There was no cataclysm, no extinction event, just this truth. Evolution doesn't wait. And Homo habilis, the trailblazer, simply couldn't keep running. They weren't destroyed, they were forgotten, overtaken by the very species who inherited their spark and left them behind in the dust of time and the silence of memory. Part 9. The quiet end of the first firekeeper. No ashes, no volcanoes, no meteors falling from the sky. The disappearance of Homo habilis was not loud. It was slow, silent, like the last breeze of a dying season. Around 1.5 million years ago, Earth began to shift. The climate changed. Rainforests shrank, water became scarce, and temperatures swung unpredictably. Lush grasslands turned dry. Rivers cracked into dust. For a species like Homo habilis, dependent on their environment, limited in ability, it was nothing less than a quiet death sentence. But nature wasn't the only force pushing them to the edge. Their own kind, other faster evolving Homo species, were unintentionally outpacing them in the race for survival. They weren't fast enough to flee, not strong enough to fend off predators, not intelligent enough to coordinate efficient hunting, and not lucky enough to get a second chance. There was no single doomsday, just a string of fading days where small bands of Homo habilis dwindled, dispersed, and quietly vanished into the shadows of time. They weren't destroyed. They were left behind, and in the great symphony of evolution, the first to ignite the flame is rarely the last to hold it. Homo habilis, the one who first held a stone with purpose, had reached their final chapter. Not because they were weak, but because evolution never waits. As new doors open for others, theirs quietly closed forever. Part 10: The Legacy of the Dreamers. No one remembers their voices. No one knows if they told stories to their children. No one carved their names into stone. But Homo habilis left behind something that will never disappear: the ability to look at a stone and see potential. That was the moment we began to change. Not because of strength, not because of speed, but because of intent. The realization that I can change this world, even with just a stone. From the first strike on a bone, from the first cut to reach marrow, they opened a door no being had walked through before. A door leading to tools, to fire, to language, to memory, to culture, to thought. From that moment on, evolution wasn't just passive adaptation. It became a conscious creation. Homo habilis wasn't the final destination. They were the ones who lit the path, who sparked the first flame that would lead to us, Homo sapiens, who walk on the moon, compose timeless music, and build cities that touch the sky. All of it began with a small creature, standing alone on the wild savanna, holding a stone, and dreaming of tomorrow. So never think they disappeared. They live on, in your brain, in the hand holding this phone, in the way you think, create, love, and hope. We are the next dream of Homo habilis, and the question is, what will we leave for those who come after? We modern humans live in a world of electric lights and digital noise, but sometimes what we need most is a moment of silence, to look back to where it all began, from the first stone to the phone in your hand, from the ancient savanna to the city you live in today, from Homo habilis to you watching this video right now. If you believe that understanding the past is the most powerful way to face the future, if you believe that every footprint in history still has something to teach us, then don't miss what's coming next. Hit that subscribe button, turn on the bell, because there are still so many stories waiting for you. Lost human species, dreams buried under time, and truths never told about what it truly means to become human. We are Homo sapiens, the ones who carry the intelligence of the past and the responsibility for the future. Let's keep writing the next chapter of this story, right here, right now.